Welcome back to Val Verde Broadcasting. I'm Duncan Casey. Welcome to another video. Another video for you. Just for you. No, you. Not you. Today, we're talking about James Bond, and I have some very illustrious, industrious guests, you might say. You wouldn't say that. Mr. Brad Watson, who, of course, you know, because if you didn't, what are you doing here?
Hello.
Mrs. Dame in some territories. Megan, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Megan is Brad's other half. And,
Indeed.
We thought this would be a really good way to talk about James Bond as a whole in terms of the cinematic universe and kind of with some of the literary stuff in there as well. Because you guys... So Brad and I obviously grew up with James Bond. I think that's fairly well known at this point. But you guys kind of just sat and watched end to end. So Meg, you hadn't watched James anything, right?
No. Yeah. So being Canadian, we didn't really have the whole James Bond thing going on. It wasn't big. It wasn't like it just wasn't. Yeah. And when I sort of was introduced first, it was the Pierce era. So that's what I thought Bond was this big, like, crazy, explosive, sexy British man who was going to take down all these guys or girls and, appealing to the public. And, yeah, and so it was really interesting because I've been living in the UK now for something like 17 years, and I thought, it's time. It is time.
Yeah. Yeah,
well, Meg was like, I want to watch the Bond movies. I want to see all the Bond movies I haven't seen. So
start to finish.
Yeah,
that's literally what every man dreams of as well.
Yeah,
The other half go.
It was waking up. Well, here's the thing. I was like, what? She's not going to. I'll say, okay, let me pick the special ones for you to watch. She's like, no, all of them from start to finish. So we literally binged every single Bond movie up until Skyfall was the last. We didn't do Spectre.
I couldn't.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Well, so you stopped at Skyfall.
We did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We did.
Okay. But we did every single one all the way up.
Right.
Not obviously Never Say Never Again or the David Niven Casino Royale.
Doesn't count.
Just the Eon Bonds.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
And so for Megs, that was I thought it would be an interesting experiment because Megs hasn't seen a lot of them. So to see for someone now to watch them all, kind of. We watched them pretty much every week, almost every day sometimes. I mean, this was also in the era where they'd re-released them on cinema, so we saw a couple of them.
Anniversary.
Yeah, so we saw a couple of them in the cinema as well. And we sort of timed it to see, we did it all in order, even when we went to the cinema. It was the right one to see. And I thought it'd be interesting to get Meg's perspective on seeing them all like that, because that's quite unique.
It's amazing. I know, because we were supposed to do this a long time ago. And every time it was like, oh, nothing happened. And then I think like the one weekend when it could have happened was when like Die Another Day was in the cinema, and I was like, I'm not coming for that.
That's right. Yeah,
I'm not bloody coming to watch that in the cinema. I saw it in the cinema twice. But yeah, so I think it's nice to have that kind of different perspective on stuff. So what I thought we'd do is just go soup to nuts. We'll start Dr. No through, I guess, Skyfall, and then maybe we can talk about Spectre and No Time to Die. But and just sort of cover it off as a whole. And I guess we'll put this will end up in a couple of parts, maybe 2 parts, as just a sort of discussion. But it's a kind of thing where like I'm the Bond guy in the channel, and Richard is the Star Trek guy. Who's behind the camera, by the way?
Is he?
Willie's. There you go.
That's who that is.
That's who that is. So Dr. No. So, from my perspective, Dr. No was the boring one for a long time when I was a kid, because basically I came at it same as you, Meg. It was 90s Brosnan. That was what got me into it. It was all like, I thought they were all boring and about golf because my dad would make me watch the videos, and they were like, I was like, this is boring and slow and dull.
There's only golfing that's golf.
I know, but kids latch on to stuff. And are bored by things very easily. So I kind of was like, and then when GoldenEye came out, I was like 11, and I didn't see it in the cinema because I was too young. But I think then we rented it, and I was like, oh, this is James Bond. And ever since then, it's been a religious thing for me to go and see it in the cinema. So that's where I was coming at it from. But obviously, over time, I've gotten a lot older, gone back and watched them. So Dr. No for me for a long time was kind of like the vanilla Bond, this kind of boring cardboard, whatever. I now, having reappraised it and having watched it a bunch of times and properly sat through it, it's very high up for me now, Doctor No. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, kind of the same for me. I always, when I was younger, I had a bit of a, the really early Bonds felt very, very dated to me. But when I sort of got older, and now, because From Russia with Love, which is the second, is very, very high on my list, I do think there is quite a substantial quality jump from Doctor No to From Russia with Love, in terms of filmmaking, in terms of just in terms of the quality of it. But even now, you watch Doctor No and you try and put yourself in the idea of this being the first one. This isn't a series of Bond movies. This isn't a Bond movie. This is Doctor No, the movie, start with the character James Bond, and it's very interesting. And I think that it's actually it's actually once he gets to Doctor No's lair that I think that it gets very dated. But that might have something to do with Austin Powers. I don't know. because of the suits they wear and all that stuff. But it for me it's always going to be a middling Bond if I was to put them all in order. But you have to, I do enjoy it and I do get a kick out of it being the first one. But Meg's opinion is way more important than mine. So
well, I don't know about that, but so it's very difficult for me because when you binge watch something so iconic, certain things will stick and certain things will not. So for me, Dr. No, I don't remember anything until he actually gets on the beach and sees the beautiful Bond girl who was just this stunning
Ursula
model,
Andress,
collecting seashells, and she's like, wow, why are you here, kind of thing.
Underneath the mango tree.
Yes! But what I loved is Connery. Oh my God. So coming from thinking Pierce is it. Like, I was dead set that Pierce Brosnan was Bond. Like, that was, you could not convince me. And then I see Connery, and he comes in with his swagger and his Scottishness, and he's like, I can't do a Scottish accent, I won't try. But I was just like, oh my gosh.
It's funny because in Doctor No, he's sort of doing an affected English accent.
Yeah.
Because he says things like, no, I'm just looking, or whatever. And it's kind of like that. It sounds like he's trying to, because there was that thing at the time of him being Scottish and them saying, no, that's not what it should be. And then Fleming then rewrote ultimately to make him Scottish.
And I loved Moneypenny, and I really loved that relationship, because especially as it goes along, they just have this fun relationship where, she obviously wants to be tapped by that, but it's never going to happen. And I love the hat throwing, and I
that's the thing that got that I didn't, watching them all, obviously I've seen them all, I know them all backwards, but watching them all in a row, watching in the Connery era, every movie has that hat gag, that hat, and they do something different with that hat gag every time.
We'll get to it because Majesty's is kind of where it ends, because he throws it to her at the wedding.
Yeah,
and she catches it, and that's a big moment.
Yeah.
Because Moneypenny in the films is an amalgamation of because Moneypenny in the books, the secretary is very that isn't there, that's not present, but he has that kind of relationship with his housekeeper, so she's an amalgam of both characters in the films. And then that developed into a whole, thing. But yeah, Doctor No is sort of young Bond is a thing we haven't really done much of. I think Doctor No and On Her Majesty's Secret Service both have that young. This is young Bond, sort of juvenile. He's a bit more juvenile and a bit more kind of. But yeah, I agree. I know what you mean. I think it slows down. It sort of bogs itself down in areas. But you kind of go, they made it for $1 million. And,
oh yeah, absolutely. Exactly. It's not that's the thing. It's not it's no wonder the quality jumped, because the budget from Russia with Love was so much higher than Doctor No. Doctor No was a pretty low budget
and they made it for budgetary reasons. The reasons why it's Doctor No and not, because originally they wanted to make Thunderball was the first one.
Yeah.
Because they weren't going to make them in order of the books. I think they had issues like Casino Royale. I'm not sure why. I think it was because of the TV movie that they'd made. So they ended up going with Doctor No just purely because it was more affordable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, it laid the groundwork, and obviously because of its success, we got a sequel.
And it has it sets up a few iconic things. And I always, as a kid, I always forgot that the tarantula scene was in Doctor No.
Yeah,
That scene where the tarantula's crawling on the piece of glass that someone's laid on Sean Connery. It's going up. But
I don't like animals. He was always hiding behind perspex. Like in Thunderball, we'll get to. But yeah, anyway, so that's Doctor No. Let's move on from Russia with Love. Arguably one of the best spy thrillers, I think.
Yeah.
I read the book recently as well, just to sort of get, and it is. I think it's one of the most faithful adaptations.
Right.
Of all
it's not surprising. It has the structure of a proper spy thriller.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, and we saw that in the cinema, didn't we? Because that was coming out, and it is one of my favourites.
Me too.
I like the train scene, but again, for me, that was like the memorable bit where it's the end and he smacks her down and actually realizes that. But that was fun. That was fun.
It's funny because in the book, basically the first half of the book is just with Red Grant. So you don't, and then the Russian plot, and it's a Smersh plot, not a Spectre's not. The Lecter is called the Spectre,
right?
So, but so obviously they had to change that for the film. But the book is very centered on the Russians, and then and it really you just then when Bond comes into it, it's kind of like their plot playing out because the movie kind of makes that thing about we know this is a trap, but you have to go anyway. Yeah. So there's that whole kind of thing. So really, that's why the book is structured in such a way that's like, look, here's the plot, here's the trap, and then we're going to watch him have to deal with it and get out of it anyway. So it's, I guess, the film, they couldn't necessarily structure it like that, but it does have a really nice sort of, it just feels kind of
absolutely, and it's also the introduction really. The proper introduction of John Barry into the team in doing the score, and even though he didn't do the song, Lionel Bart wrote the song, but he did the score. But the 007 theme he does for that, which is one of my favourite pieces of music from all the Bond, that's from Russia with Love. Yeah. That all gets there. Q is in from Russia with Love. It's his first.
Desmond Llewellyn, because Boothroyd is in Doctor No. Different.
Exactly. And so again, it's setting up more of the stuff we love. But Robert Shaw, man, it's Robert Shaw. It's that whole scene. Not just the fight is iconic. It's actually a game-changing cinematic moment in the history of action filmmaking. But to me, it's the build-up where Connery is testing him, isn't sure he's who he says he is, and constantly testing him, and he passes the tests. But he still doesn't trust. That little cat and mouse moment build up. The book does that so good.
Better because it's like you meet Red Grant and you sort of see Red Grant for that, and he's this horrible force, and he gives you all his backstory about like how he grew up in Ireland. He literally used to go out murdering dogs by moonlight, and then he got bored of dogs, so he'd go out into like the little villages and start murdering people and stuff. And that's when the Russians recruited him as their honestly, he's the most sadistic, horrible person. And then you forget about him for ages until this guy called Nash turns up. Right. And then you start realising, through Nash's actions, that actually that's Red Grant. And then the fight at the end, it's very, very quickly over in the book, and obviously it's iconic in the film. But what's great is that you just know there's this ominous cloud hanging over the whole thing, and that you're waiting for this guy to turn up.
Yep.
And the film kind of does that as well. And there's things in it like, he had a Windsor knot, which because it's sort of set up, and because it's Ian Fleming, he's like, he had the wrong shirt and jacket combination, and that's how, that's how. But he was odd because all he cared about was killing people. So it's like when he had to dress, he didn't give a toss, and he was trying to put on a disguise, but that's what gave him away because he just never put any effort into that kind of stuff. But anyway, sorry, Meg. Yeah. What do you think of From Russia with Love?
I mean, it's funny enough, it's not high on my list of favorites. Okay. But as I say, for me, the memorable scene is the train, the outfits. So I really like the costumes in these ones as well. But also I really love and it, as time goes, I really love the opening sequence. I love how creative they are. And those are the things I remember. But funny enough, I know it's your favorite, and it was his dad's favorite as well. And we saw it in cinema, and I saw it here. couldn't tell you.
Couldn't tell me what happens.
Anything.
It doesn't stick. It just never sticks in her brain.
Funnily enough, with this one, because it started that trend of opening with James Bond is dead.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's the guy with it, and I think they had to recast that for the reveal because they'd had a guy who looked a bit too like Connery when they.
That's right. Yeah.
So they got to go with like a moustache, and like one eye or whatever.
But what I would say is Connery definitely finds himself in this one. So at the beginning, in Dr. No, he's very, very raw, very young, very go-getter-ish. Whereas this one, he is definitely more professional, more settled. And it's like those little tweaks that I remember for this one.
Okay. It's interesting because the novel ends. So this one obviously ends with, he escapes. So they kill Rosa Klebb. They get away. In the book, Rosa Klebb is killed. I think Felix turns up and saves him, but she gets him with a shoe. So the end of the novel is him collapsing on the floor, having been poisoned, and you don't know if he survived or not. But again, the novel came much later. I think it's the 5th book. Yeah. In the series, so it's like you can't do that with the second film, I guess. But no, I mean, I'm kind of with you. I it's one of my favorite. I think just in terms of the aesthetic of it, the costumes are amazing. I'm big into all that sort of stuff, but it's like it just feels like a very slick production.
Love it.
And I think for anybody who knows Bond as well, they know that, stunts and stuff were done properly. We weren't looking at all this CGI stuff back then. We were looking at people actually performing really risky things. And when you watch the behind the scenes to any of these, it's really like shocking. You would never get away with that on set. Like, God, the amount of things like I have to sign my life away whenever I'm acting. Whereas now it's like back then it was just like, no, this is what we're going to do.
This is the other good things, and Megs is wonderful because she wants to watch the making of it after every movie. We watch the behind the scenes stuff of the story behind it, what happened.
It is fascinating.
Yeah. So she's done it. Patrick McNee narrating, but So there's been a lot of Bond going through Meg's brain in a very short space of time.
So much.
But then we go on to which I think you really responded to Goldfinger.
I did. Yeah, I did like Goldfinger. Yeah. That's where they painted her gold, wasn't it?
I don't. So okay, this is interesting for me because Goldfinger's one that's I have tried to reappraise recently. I've tried to sort of get on board with it. I struggle with Goldfinger. I really struggle with Goldfinger. Because I go, most of this Bond is totally reactive. He doesn't do much in the whole thing. Like, even Goldfinger is dispatched. He's hoisted by his own petard at the end because he shoots the window. And gets sort of
that's true.
Hilariously sucked out of the plane.
And he doesn't even defuse the bomb.
He doesn't defuse the bomb. He has to have the plot told to him. He's captured for a lot of it. The only thing he does is sort of rapily seduce Pussy Galore, which is awful. So I don't
and persuade her to turn against him, which is the key thing,
Yeah, I guess. He basically slings some knob, and that's how he wins.
I mean, come on,
Sorry.
But if they could do it in Austin Powers, it's good.
Yeah.
Gold.
I love gold. So it's one for me. I kind of go like, I know it's why really Goldfinger is why we have this enduring series because
it's considered the start of the Bond formula was invented in Goldfinger. But I'm not as down on it as you are, but I'm kind of the same. As in everyone regards but as in everyone regards it as the best Connery Bond. I'm like no, From Russia with Love is better.
They're all watching you guys. They're like, tut.
Well, if my Bond fandom,
there is some good stuff. You pointed out the sister.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So the sister, the girl that comes in, you're like, oh, she's got this, right?
Tilly-
Yeah,
Tilly
she,
Masters.
like,
Is it
she
Tilly
comes
Masterson?
in.
Yeah,
She's like
to avenge
Jill or Tilly.
Yeah,
in
to avenge
in
her sister.
A cute little car, isn't she? And she
was
overtakes him, and she's like this badass driver. She gets knocked out with a shoe. Or no, it wasn't
No,
a shoe.
that's Austin Powers.
She was a model. She wasn't an actress. I think, which
They're
shows
all
because
models.
Yeah.
They're
it's
all
like this,
models.
Let me go! You're breaking my arm.
You're breaking my arm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're all models. You
they-
watch
yeah.
the behind the scenes, you're like, oh yeah, they were a model.
But no, for me, yes, it's full of iconic moments. I get that. Like, I understood all that. Gert Frobe, I think, is fine, but it's just silly, nonsensical things like he like the
It's
whole
not his voice, though, is it?
No, it's dubbed. But he reveals his plot to the room full of gangsters, right? And he's like, "It is a particularly ha ha ha," and then I want to suck your blood. Apparently. But then, like is it Mr. Soto who doesn't want to do it?
Yeah.
He's like, "Okay, bye," and then he has him killed, crushed into a cube, and brought back so he can get his gold out of the car.
Yeah.
But then he just gasses everyone anyway. So why did you tell them that?
Yeah,
If you were gonna get,
that's what
I want
don't
to. Yes,
understand
That's what baddies do. They tell you.
I
the
assume,
plot.
I assume is it because he wants to get their money and then he kills them?
Yeah, but he does it.
But
In
there's
the same room at the
exactly.
same
There's
time.
no. You don't see.
This is pre-iPhone. It's not like they were going to go.
Exactly. You don't. There's no bank transfer happening. No nothing. So he just gasses them, and you're like,
So what did that achieve?
What? Hey.
Is this the one where he's like, I expect you to die?
Yeah.
Yes,
No, it's
yeah.
one I expect you to
It's the laser up
die.
his Jaffers one,
Yeah.
which in the book is
that's
a
interesting.
saw, which is
No,
worse.
which is-
Okay.
You know,
But anyway,
yeah.
so that's
But I like it for what it is, and I like
Yeah.
it, and I appreciate it standing as the setter of the template.
Do you think it suffers from expectations? So it's like, everyone tells you this is supposed to be the best one, so you go into it with that.
But possibly,
It wasn't
Possibly.
my favorite.
Right.
no.
It's okay.
The funny thing is watching it, I definitely felt a change of pace and energy in it.
Right.
Like it seemed to be have a bit more zip to it.
Yeah.
When it starts, and which is good. You right?
Also, people at home, they noticed that I was moving the camera when I was live. So.
Oh right, okay.
Fair enough.
But yeah, anyway, let's
Oh, yeah, that was
Thunderball.
cool.
Yes.
Cool.
Let's move on.
Thunderball. Here we
Thunderball.
go.
I
So
struggled 3 times. I had to.
Yeah.
She couldn't get through it in one go.
I fell asleep 3 times. How long? And I get this was like iconic, and but how long do you need that water scene?
That's the problem with it. So that's what a lot of people point to, is
Ah.
all the underwater shit, which is fair. It does, because as soon as it's one of those things they discovered underwater filming techniques. So it's like,
So
this
of
is
course
what
they're
it's
going to
all
use
about.
it. Yeah.
My thing for that is, like, I watched it a little while ago, and I tried to just go into it and go, like, stop focusing on all the boring stuff, just watch all the cool stuff. And I do like it, and I'm sort of predisposed to like it because it's shot in the Bahamas, which is, and even when I was there last time, there was a guy going like, "Oh man, I remember when they came down here, they filmed that car." I was like, "Yeah, okay, fine." And I can see all the places and stuff, which is really cool. And in fact, there's been times when I've just been there and gone, "This feels like," and then you go back and go,
And
oh, "That's
is.
where that was filmed." So I do like Thunderball, but yeah, it's all the underwater stuff, and the problem is it's like, it's not terribly well staged, so it's kind of not left to
very
right.
No,
right to
no,
left. You
it's
kinda
just
go, who shot that?
it's just you just and it's just people getting their mask ripped off a lot,
Yeah.
and all this,
Death
and
by
there's,
mask ripping.
and there's nothing,
it's
like for me there is and we're obviously going to get to it further down the line, but and anyone knows I'm a lover and a defender of the Dalton era, but in License to Kill,
Did it
there's
better,
an underwater moment that has such an inventive way of getting out of that, that and there's nothing like that in this. It is just people swimming that way. There goes a spear.
Yeah.
Someone's
yeah,
mask
totally.
comes off, and then the same, and it happens again and again and again, and it's wonderfully shot, like as in the imagery, like the way it's lit, and you take that into account, that this is the first time really a sort of underwater action scenes were being staged for the cinema in this kind of capacity, and it was quite a thing, quite an achievement.
Yeah, but you know what it
But
accomplished?
it's
It's like when you go over to like your grandparents or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, let's watch this slide we had on our vacation in 1942," and you're like,
Patty and Selma's
"Oh."
But I also find it fairly dull, sort of.
As a plot wise, it's quite so. Yeah, so the plot is.
I think I like the plot, as in I like the hook of the plot, the initial sort of setup.
The hook.
But then it just meanders. I don't.
It's about thieving nukes,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And no, I know what you mean. That plane is still there, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah, you can,
that's worth
you can
seeing.
dive it.
Oh, I
but,
bet you people do. Yeah.
Anyway, right, so
Yeah.
you only lived twice.
You know,
You only lived twice, Mr. Bond.
I love You Only Live Twice. I'm
You do?
a defender of You Only Live Twice.
I'm not. I mean, I am and I'm not. There's stuff in it that's, again, it's like I can pick moments. It's Lewis Gilbert's first one, obviously.
Yeah,
There's things like that big helicopter pullback shot that's just amazing.
What happens in this one?
This is the Japanese one.
Japanese one.
Oh, now
Ever so faintly racist one.
now it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
He's undercover.
Yeah.
No, it's cool. Like so.
Konnichiwa.
I'm
6'2".
It was so.
I mean, that's in the film. I'm not like.
Well, I mean, you never know. I mean, you can be what you want to be these days, but.
Not then. Though.
But what I loved, so there's two things that really stick out. So the behind the scenes for me is really interesting. So the two women that they did get to play the parts of his wife, and then was she an agent?
She was an agent, yeah.
Now they actually had to reverse the roles because they could not learn English. And that's right.
One threatened to kill us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one
and
of
she
yeah.
was like, could you imagine this day and age if I went on set and I was like, you won't give me this role. Nobody would care. They'd be like,
well,
here's a prop, Boulder. Go end it now. Nobody cares. But back then they were like, ooh. No, she's cried. Give her that.
Yeah, she
which
blackmailed
is
them into.
Which is crazy, but props to her. The other thing I really thought was cool was inventive, and maybe this was like a thing, I don't know, but how they kill her, like with that line, that string with
that's
a
the
bit
thing
of
apparently.
poison.
Yeah, you run poison down the string.
That
sucks.
as a kid, that is a memorable.
That's the moment
thing.
where your dad goes.
That haunts me.
You do that for real, you know.
It's the first moment in the whole Bond franchise that he could say that.
That haunts me.
Yeah.
That haunts me.
No, it's a haunting, and it's so well done. It's really props to Lewis
well
Gilbert, the way
done.
that stays, the way that's directed.
Yeah.
John Barry's music doing, and the score for You Only Live Twice is cracking.
It's
it's
the
wonderful.
first entry in the Lewis Gilbert thesis on vehicles what eat other vehicles.
Yes.
For that's basically his whole thing. But it is great. I mean, I get
it's
that.
fun,
The opening sequence is so good. The opening in space, like that, it's the first Bond movie to open in space, right? It opens and you're in orbit, and you got the capsule and the John Barry boom. You know, that build up of that that first track is so good, and it to me, even though it's still obviously a 60s movie and it's got its dated aspects, for me that opening sequence is brilliant filmmaking, brilliant build up of tension and a brilliant reveal and a brilliant what are we watching? Bond in space? You know, it's like it to me it's got an atmosphere to it.
Well, it's yet another one as well where Bond dies at the start.
Oh yeah,
but so, and this is really, I would say this is, I would credit You Only Live Twice really with the Bond formula, in as much as you've got that Ken Adams set at the end.
Which is
you've
incredible.
Got the layer, you've got the whole, you've got. I mean, the poster's ludicrous. It's like James Bond walking around, like horizontally around the edge of a crater with like ninja shoes on.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't understand it. Going, yes, I'm posing.
Do you know what though? We watched every trailer yesterday to try to spark my memory on
to remind her what happened in what
and
film.
I turned to Brad. I said, "These aren't helping. They're not telling me anything about anything.
The trailers are
What
bad.
is this?" He's like, "Yeah, they're
This
bad."
introduced Blofeld as well, so you got Donald Pleasance.
Which is
the
icon. The
cat that's desperate.
The
to
cat
get away
that
from
just
Right?
wants to get the hell out of the
Yeah,
explosions.
I've never seen a terrified
The
animal.
first thing she said, she went, "Oh my god, look at that cat!"
I know, it's like
yeah,
clawing at his arm. At one
yeah,
point.
that cat.
Mr. Bigglesworth.
I struggle with the Pleasance portrayal because obviously they cast someone else, didn't they? Who you can see glimpses of in the film, who's got a big white beard and stuff. So this
Right? Yes,
can't remember the
that's
guy's
right.
name.
Yeah.
But he looks like Santa Claus. He's like ho ho ho. I'm Blofeld. But yeah, Donald Pleasance's performance. There's the whole like goodbye, Mr. Bond. It's all
Bond.
very robotic and strange, and I don't know.
I like it.
Telly
I like
Savalas
it.
is probably hands down probably my favorite Blofeld, but
Yeah, well, yeah, but he's playing it just like a bloke.
I know.
Whereas Donald Pleasence is playing it like a Bond villain,
like a
and
robot in a man's suit.
I like it. I like it, and
Okay,
it's really cool because obviously Dr. Evil is
well, I grew up with the
based
whole
on
like
that.
going.
Yeah.
You know, and it is very that. It's like you
But,
only live twice, Mr. Bond.
But, you only live
I like chocolate.
twice.
It's like that. It sort of has that. It's like, I'm a jovial sort of.
But I think
guy.
he was the first to give a Bond villain a real sort of a real character, a real what's become a very iconic take on Bond villains.
I think
but it was kind of the first.
The
to do that.
reveal had to be big because you had before that he was always shrouded and it was all kind of like number one, show me your dick, number one, whatever. Didn't say that. But it was all like put the tarantula up his bum or whatever. And now
number 3 hit number 4.
I think that would be number 2.
yeah. Number 2. But so it was a big deal. I mean, I'm not. He's not my favourite, nor is he my least favourite. So that's that way. So let's crack on. On a Majesty's Secret Service, the first time with the new James Bond.
Here we go. Yeah. So what's your take on now George Lazenby comes along?
Good eye.
So awful. And it made me sad because I was like, okay, so again, Pierce Brosnan being the boof Bond,
yes.
and then all of a sudden I'm converted. I'm like, no, nobody's gonna beat Connery. And then this guy comes in and he didn't. Yeah. And the behind the scenes, he even says, do you know what? I didn't know what I was doing. He faked a bunch of films he was in to basically say
he was a blagger. He was a blagger.
He totally blagged. This is like a fact. He blagged because he saw Bond. So what he did was he went to get the suit, and then he went and he got the watch, and he went to Cyril
Castle and basically got a suit that had been made for Connery that he had.
Yeah. So props to him for doing it. He was a model, of course.
Nowadays, you'd be like, you sad bastard. Like, if I wore that jumper's from No Time to Die and these shoes are from No Time to Die, if I turned up with the watch from No Time to Die and went like, hello, are you looking for James Bond? They go...
It was a real letdown. It was just like, I was so curious to see what was going to be next. And he just came off pretentious and awful and arrogant.
And he's trying to do a sort of English. So he's got that. My name is Bond, James Bond. It sounds
he's trying too hard.
My dad, I often reference my dad for a lot because he was around then. He went and he saw. I remember, his take on it was, he was wooden. He was terrible. It was a massive disaster. In hindsight, this film has been like appraised to the point where now obviously No Time to Die is taking its cues from it and that kind of stuff. So it's now,
and a lot of people regard it as one of the best Bond movies, despite Lazenby.
I think it's one of the best.
Regarded as one of the best.
Maybe.
I actually disagree.
Okay, cool.
I don't buy that. I don't hate it. Like if you take Lazenby out of the picture, I don't hate it, and I think it's quite a well-made film in certain respects, but I think it's still rather silly, and I think the because everyone says, "Oh, no, On a Majesty's is like a proper down to earth movie where beautiful women are getting hypnotized to
it's full of
deliver.
This sort of portent until you get to the grand scheme is he's going to like cure women of their allergies, and it's so again like, I mean, this is not to talk, I don't really want to talk about the politics of it all too much, but there is that thing of like he's curing an African woman of being allergic to bananas and stuff like that by making her eat bananas.
That's not a thing, is it?
Well, exactly. It's all very kind of like, and as a Chinese probably doesn't like noodles.
Yeah, I think it's not that I don't like it on Her Majesty's Secret Service movie, but I think people have weirdly
camera incredulously.
People have weirdly held it in regard as a proper good down to and it's not. It's silly. Yeah. It's a very very silly film.
It's a daft film, and it doesn't. It's awkwardly paced. I think the problem is once you get to Piz Gloria and it's all that he's doing his undercover thing, it's fine, but it's like it just becomes another movie. He's dubbed for all of it. Yeah, not well, and it's like it's. And then the ending is kind of meh. And then I don't know. I like that it ends on the note it ends of, and it just feels to me like an island. It's a totally separate thing. Yeah. And I don't hate it. I grew up thinking this was the worst Bond film ever, and it
isn't.
It really isn't.
And it isn't. And there is stuff I really do like in it. Yeah. But overall, I think it's a meh Bond movie.
Yeah. It was a real like wake up call, I think, for them going like, wow, what direction would you go in? Arguably, I haven't read it yet, but it is supposed to be one of the better books. I can understand why. I think it's a proper, like, it's Bond probably not falling in love for the first time, but really, finding someone who was, all this sort of stuff. But yeah.
How did you feel about the ending? The death of the marriage and then the death of Tracy.
I thought that was his best acting.
He is actually very good in that final scene.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I give him
and I
props
liked
for that.
her. I thought she was great. I thought she was feisty. I thought she was fantastic. And actually, she saved that movie for me. Because of how good she was, and she carried him really.
Well, and that is in the material as well. Like the car chases, she's driving. She saves him from.
And it's sad. Like it is really, really sad. And you're just like, well, that sucks.
Yeah. So I think that probably people are remembering that feeling that the ending gives you, because it does shock you. Yeah. It does shock you, and you're not expecting it, and so it. And I think that it kind of infects the rest, where everyone thinks, oh, yeah, this is the down and gritty Bond because his wife dies. Like, after he stopped the grand scheme of hypnotizing women to go and deliver a biological agent to
Omega
virus. Yeah. So I think the ending is very good, very effective, and I think Lazenby actually knocks it out of the park in that very final moment.
That final moment, I would say he became an actor.
Yeah, and then credits on his whole career. So okay, let's move on. Let's clip along. So what I think a lot of us would say is probably bottom of the barrel Bond, Diamonds Are Forever. The behind the scenes stuff on this was obviously. Lazenby was contracted.
You didn't mind it too much.
I didn't.
No.
So Lazenby was contracted for 7 movies. He was talked out of it by an agent at the time who said, "It's done, darling, move on." And so he went and grew a beard and had no career. So fine, good, bye-bye. But they were like, I think MGM especially were going like, no, it's got to be Connery, get him back, just pay him whatever he wants. So he had this insane deal. He came back. He looked to have aged about 10 years by the time he finally came out. He brought a proper paunch on, all right, my lover. And I don't know. For me, it is just a like a.
I think it's a wet flannel of a movie.
Yeah,
it just flaps along.
I think the problem as well is Connery's performance in that he didn't want to be there, and that was apparent when you're watching it.
That's the thing. One of the first things you said is he's not invested in this.
He's not invested. He's not Bond anymore.
The first image that pops into my mind when you talk about Sean Connery in Diamonds Are Forever is that moment when someone goes to frisk him, and there's the mouse trap or whatever, which is so lame. But he does it. He just goes.
Yeah.
And it's like that to me is the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't give a fuck anymore. But why would he? He'd been so fed up with the whole thing, and rightly or wrongly, but it's just kind of like, right, I'm taking them to the cleaners.
He had it, and he was just like, I'm done. I do love the song though, the Diamonds Are Forever song.
Of course,
Shirley Bassey. Well, I think we'll talk about the music, I think, as we go.
Yeah,
a bit more. But
I like, and I love the little theme for the two assassins. Crispin Glover's dad.
Yes, Winton Kids. And Potter Smith, who played.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one.
Which one's Mr. Kidd?
Mr. Kidd, I think. Oh God, I don't know. I can't remember now.
But they're like
Potter Smith was a musician.
He was a
jazz musician.
He wasn't even an actor, was he?
No.
They're a fun little thing. They're the most memorable thing about that movie, I think.
Yeah,
they're a fun little duo.
Yeah. Charles Gray as Blofeld, I think, is a big.
No,
I like Charles Gray a lot. He's great in You Only Live Twice, but as a different character. Yeah. But I think that Blofeld is just so. And it's just the thing is, people credit Roger Moore or condemn Roger Moore for being the kind of camp era of Bond. It's like this is where that starts.
Diamonds Are Forever is more camp than any.
Yeah. I mean, totally.